Being born in 1977, I feel like I must have grown up in the greatest toy era in the history of the world. I'm sure I didn't if you talk to other people, but by age 8, WrestleMania 2 happened. Matter of fact, it happened on my birthday. I was absolutely in love with LJN toy figures. And there was other stuff that was out there that was amazing too. Thundercats was one of my favorite, also made by LJN. It's the greatest era of Motu stuff and G.I. Joe stuff, but LJN was not only my most favorite, it is the most played with toy. And the fact that I played with them so much, and I'm sure many other people did, you rarely find them in very good condition. And while the ones that are in poor condition can be worth very little money, the ones that are in amazing condition can be worth a ton. Of course, if they're still on card, they're going to be worth even more. But for the purposes of this video, we're going to look at the history of this a little bit, and we're going to check out these amazing toys and what their current market value is. And we're dealing with figures that are in very good condition to mint condition. These figures by LJN were quite different than any other figure you would find back in that era, and you rarely have seen them from any other brand. But the production on these guys right here started in 1984 and went all the way through 1989. I'm showing you a chart right here, and you'll see that the production level was never lower than 1989, which when we get to the top 10 list, you'll see that most of the figures in that category, the 10 most valuable figures, are going to be from that era on what is called the Black Card release, which was not even released by LJN. That contract went to a different company because LJN folded, which makes them really valuable in comparison. 1984 was the second least produced year, and then it climbed steadily. 1985 was the year I bought my first figures. I know that now because we bought the ring with that first set of figures that we bought, and the ring didn't come out, I don't believe, till 1985. So I missed a whole year, and I was a wrestling fan of those figures out there. So the production level must have been way down here, and then it exploded in 1985. 1986 was the top of the production, and then it steadily declined, although 1987 they produced a ton of figures as well. The variants from 1984, some of them continued. Of course, the Hulk Hogan doll, which was the most popular figure in all of wrestling. But that's kind of part of the reason why the Hulk Hogan figures, until the very end, weren't the most valuable, because there were so many of them out there. So this list might surprise some of you. We're going to start with some of the runners-up. And remember a couple things. When we're talking about this list today, we're talking about mint condition with accessories. Like, for instance, Nikolai had a hat that went with him. We don't have that hat right here, so this wouldn't qualify because it's not in mint condition, nor does it have the hat. I think Iron Sheik is the best condition of any of these figures I have right here. My stash is inside of the better ones, but you can see these things were worn down. It is very hard to find these in mint condition. We're not going to deal with on-card stuff because some of them there are so few on card out there of some of the black cards that it is very difficult to pinpoint value. And we're talking about people out there, resellers like me, who are also collectors, that want to know which ones to look for that they can actually find. And that's what we're looking at here today. You'll notice Roddy Piper has this kilt. Later production, he didn't have the kilt. And we'll talk about some of the variants as well. They originally weren't going to make these as 8-inch figures. They were taking around to toy shows and getting opinions. And the 8-inch brick figures, the solid hard rubber that weren't posable, that weren't articulating, really rang true to a lot of folks, and there were some limitations in production as well. And because of those facts, those things were very played with. They're very different than most toys that you'll find today, and I remember them fondly. I even remember the packaging, wrestling superstars, and they would come with a card on the back. They would come with a poster underneath the feet of the wrestler. And there are quite a few of these that might even surprise you. Some figures that you think are extremely produced, they still hold tremendous value if you can find them in mint condition. And we'll mention some of those. Even the earliest Hulk Hogan's, classic Hulk Hogan, if you can find them in perfect shape, they can still bring a ton of money. For the sake of this video, I'm not going to go into the date of release, the year of release for all of these figures. You can find that information elsewhere. But I'm going to give you a list of maybe 10, 15, where if you can find them in mint condition, you can expect to get well over $100 for them. Ken Patera, which I didn't even know that one existed. It must have come out a little later. Outback Jack figure, I'd love to have that one. Terry Funk, That one's cool. That one had an iron that came with it. If you remember Terry Funk. Elizabeth with the gold dress. You can get $100 for that one if it is in mint condition. Kamala, I never seen that one out in the wild before. JYD was amongst the very first figures that I ever bought, and he has that collar. If you can find him with that collar, you can expect to get $125 to $150 if it's mint. And that was one of the highly produced figures. We have some that came out in '84, of course, and then we had some that came out much later. And a lot of times, the ones that came out a little bit later are in better condition. Not necessarily because they're younger figures, but because the era was already shifting and collecting was becoming a big part of it in the early stages. So while the line started in 1985, wrestling didn't hit its peak yet. WrestleMania 1 was 1985. WrestleMania 2 was 1986. And that's when everything exploded. So the collectability of these things went up really quickly. Not to mention the cartoon that came out was also 1985. Looking back and doing a little history on that, I was surprised to see that Brad Garrett, of all people, was the voice of Hulk Hogan in that cartoon series. So kids, of course, are going to play with these items. And as they get older, they're going to want them again. And it's difficult to find those early ones in good condition, but they were so heavily produced that a lot of these on this list, we're not even in the top 25 yet, y'all. We're going to go through them really quick and get to the top 10, the ones you really want to look for out there, whether you're a collector or if you're just a garage sale hunter like me. Like I said, JYD was one of my absolute favorite figures. I hope to find one in excellent mint condition one day. I do not have one, and I want the chain. Coco Beware a little bit later, and he came with the bird. What was the bird's name? Frankie, I think. You could find that one with the bird. You can get upwards of $150 for that one. Demolition, strangely enough, they only came out with Axe. You can find that one, and that one I believe is a later version as well. And you can get $100 to $150 for that. Luscious Johnny Valiant, I didn't even know he was there. He must have been a manager for somebody. That's a pretty rare one to find, but there's not huge demand for it either. The British Bulldogs, I think they had two different versions at two different times. If you can find them in mint condition, $100 to $150. Even the Hulk Hogan, the original Hulk Hogan, which they released just about every year, with the belt in perfect condition, you can expect to get about that as well. The Jake the Snake Roberts one, and I've seen people that, because the snake is so easy to lose, just like anything for any of these. I remember the Mouth of the South one had the megaphone attached to his hand so you couldn't lose it, but the snake wasn't like that. There's like cottage industries out there for people taking these figures and redoing them, stripping the paint, repainting them, customizing them, changing them. So it's difficult to research this stuff. There are people out there 3D printing some of the accessories that went with them. No doubt the snake is one of those. In later years, you started to see some of the managers, and they would make figures of them. Vince McMahon himself had a figure. They had two different variants of the referee figure, and you can expect to get, if you find those in mint condition, $125 or so, maybe a little bit more at times. The One Man Gang was a shorter run one, and you can expect to get $175 to $200 on that one. The Killer Bees, one of my absolute favorites, Jumpin' Jim Brunzell and B. Brian Blair. That was a fun tag team to watch. I think they were my second favorite, right behind the British Bulldogs. The Honky Tonk Man with the guitar can bring around $200 to $225. Billy Jack Haynes, if you ever want to dive deep in a rabbit hole, check out his history. And I was surprised that he even had an LJN figure. $200 to $225. And just like Terry Funk came with a hat and an iron, I believe, Billy Jack Haynes came with a hat as well. Other ones with different accessories like Harley Race, you can expect to get with the crown $200 to $250 in mint condition. Elizabeth came with a purple skirt in one of the variations. Very limited run with the purple skirt, $200 to $250. Strike Force, Tito and Rick as a tag team can bring $200 to $300 in mint condition. And the Big Boss Man Black Card is outside of our top 10, but can bring $200 to $300 plus shipping. Before we get into the top 10 here, just know one thing. There is a lot of mystery surrounding some of these figures. There are some mythical figures out there that pop up from time to time, or mold figures, prototype type figures. It's very difficult to nail down any of this stuff. So it's difficult to give an absolutely accurate top 10 with some of this stuff that's out there. And some things like, for instance, the Brutus the Barber Beefcake Black card, I'm not even sure that exists. I've seen pictures of it on card, and I just don't know. So some information from you guys could be helpful. We will get into the black card discussion here in just a second. But as far as this entire line goes, there is some interesting stuff that went on with changes in colors of uniforms, of boots, of tights, and all kinds of different things that add variables to all of this stuff. But the point of this video is just to give you an idea of what maybe you can find out there when you're on the garage sale trail and you're looking and hunting in thrift stores and estate sales. And if you can remember some of these that we're about ready to talk about, you might be in for a bundle of money. There's quite a bit of lore around some of these figures, like for instance, Adrian Adonis's figure that was released again in later years was released after he had passed away, which suggests maybe they were doing that to give the royalties to the family. There's speculation on how much each individual wrestler made, and a few of them, it's pretty certain that they made individual deals with higher royalties like Hogan. There's no doubt that Hogan probably made as much or more than every single other wrestler combined. And of course, they produced more of the popular figures. So some of the ones that you would think aren't worth much because they weren't popular, that's not the case on some of these. Also, George the Animal Steel, you know, all the hair that he had, I think they tried to produce it with hair and they settled for just the bumps and stuff on his chest because it didn't come off right. Number 10 on the list is Bam Bam Bigelow, which I believe to be a 1988 release. If looking at all these lists, they don't always line up. I see some people put Bam Bam Bigelow in the 1989 black card release. Some people put Elizabeth in there too. And I've yet to see those black card items with those two people on it. I think Bret Hart is the other one that I can't find on there. Brutus Beefcake, I really want to know if Brutus Beefcake was on the black card, because if he is, that might be at the top of my list, and I'm getting conflicting information when I'm doing my research. But Bam Bam Bigelow, you could expect that 1988, it was a late release in 88, and it in perfect condition can bring $250 to $300. Hogan had two late releases that did not look at all like the very earliest releases of Hogan, and the white shirt variant looks like it wins out, and the white shirt Hogan variant looks like it can bring between $200 and $325 if you can find it mint. If you haven't noticed, we're treating tag teams as one figure, which is a little unfair, but if you can find the Hart Foundation, $200 to $350 in mint condition, throw in Jimmy Hart and you got a real winner. Rick Rude on the black card comes in at number 7, and you can expect to get $275 to $375 for the Rick Rude. It was one of their rarer ones, produced in very low numbers, but it was an odd one because it didn't look like these. You know, it's easy to wrestle with these. It was easy to take Big John Studd and Andre the Giant and do a body slam, but Rick Rude had his hands down here. Speaking of different variants, you saw a later version, I think in 1985, may have been 86, where Andre the Giant came out with much shorter hair. He was a slightly smaller figure. I mean, just look at these things. King Kong Bundy weighed the most of any figure, but Andre the Giant was the tallest by far. But the next year's version had shorter hair, and it wasn't quite as tall, a tiny bit slimmer, a tiny bit shorter, and a little bit wider, and that figure can bring some decent money too, but it didn't even crack my top 25. Hey, I want to take a break and invite everybody to come and join us over on Dibdit.com, DIBDIT.com, and we buy and sell this type of stuff and anything that's not nailed down, and we have a great time doing it. There's always a link below to Dibdit, and you guys can check that out. Click through that link, use code Commonwealth, and you can get $5 off a purchase of $10 or more. We do live shows over there, and we sell anything and everything, and it's a great community with a bunch of like-minded people. Come and join us. So Rick Rude was our number 7, and we're looking at black card ones right here for the most part on our way out of here. the first release of the Ultimate Warrior comes towards the tail end of these releases where production was really low and you had a very popular figure. So people look back and they want an Ultimate Warrior figure. And that one you can expect to get $200 to $400 in mint condition. So remember something, now we're not talking about figures that are still on card, and I'm using terms like the black card. That just simply means they were produced with a black backing to the card as opposed to a blue one. It doesn't really matter when we're talking about value, but if you ever see any wrestling figure with a black wrestling superstar's background to it and it's on the card, grab it, because I'm talking about mint condition loose right now. If you can find those black ones that are still on card and the card is in good condition, we're talking thousands of dollars. There are some variants, however, that were before the black card era that are still valuable, like the Corporal Kirshner one. The Corporal Kirshner one was made without a beard, and then it was made with a beard. The one with a beard is very hard to find, and you could possibly get up to $400 for that one as well. The only wrestling match I ever went to in my life, we saw Nikolai Volkov and we saw Corporal Kirshner fight in the main event. That was an awesome match, and I remember that fondly from my childhood, and it just led to me wanting these now, but more importantly, back then, playing with these things. I must have been done playing with these by, say, 1987, however, because I don't remember a lot of these later ones, and being born in 77, you know, that would have put me at about 10, 11 years old, and I think I was about done playing with them. That magical age of, 8 or 9 years old when this stuff was amazing. Hacksaw Jim Duggan, a later version on the black card as well. It might have been his only version, I think it was, and he had his 2x4. That one can bring $250 to $450. Then you have a couple of tag team guys without their tag team partner. You can only imagine if production continued that you would find these other ones as well. Warlord, $300 to $500 in mint condition, comes in at number 3. Haku comes in between $370 to $550. Let's say $300 in slightly less than mint condition. But mint condition, you're going to get over that. And he was part of the Islanders, but alone he can bring that much money. All right, we're down to the final one, except for we're not, because there's a caveat right here that a lot of people don't understand, and that I didn't learn till a little while ago. There's one figure that is not technically an LJN figure, but it was designed to work with the LJN collection. And that one we're going to have to put at number 2. Even though in reality it can bring as much or more than number 1, but technically it's not LJN. It was produced by Hasbro after Sergeant Slaughter left WWF to work with G.I. Joe, and it was a mail-in deal. So there were very, very few of these, and you can expect to get between $500 and $650 if it's in mint condition. Before I reveal the one that I think should be in the number 1 spot, because it is possible to find it and it brings really good money, let me mention a couple more things about this last run from 1989, the black card collection, if you will. And this was produced by a Canadian company, and a lot of these, if you find them, are going to be in Canada, but you can find them down here in the States as well. The most common of that collection, that era, was Hulk Hogan in the white shirt and the red shirt, Demolition's Axe, Jim Duggan, Honky Tonk Man, Big John Studd, which is not on my list and doesn't even appear on some of the list, and Jake Roberts. So I'll have to look into the Big John Studd. I have a feeling that one should be at least on my list of runners-up here. Haku, Rick Rude, Big Boss Man, and Andre the Giant appear in the mid-rarity. However, one of them is going to be our number 1. Ultimate Warrior, Ted DiBiase, Macho Man, Adrian Adonis, and Brutus Beefcake appear in the top tier, but there's a discrepancy with some of the lists I'm seeing, so I can't necessarily put some of those up there. But number 1 on my list, and you can find confirmable solds out there, and that's why I'm putting this one up there and kind of leaving some of the other stuff out of it, is the Andre the Giant black card late edition full heel turn giant figure with the black strap going across it. If you see an Andre the Giant like this, which is the one I had growing up, it is the least valuable. If you see one with the short hair, it's going to be the second most valuable. If you see one with the black strap, pick it up because it can bring you $400 to $700. So y'all, forgive me out there if I've made some mistakes. I have no doubt that I have, because I've read collector page after collector page, and the stories don't always mesh, and I'm no expert in this category. But I hope this helps you when you're out there hunting at garage sales and looking at these figures, because you will sometimes come across an absolute load of these. And it's really important to know the differences and the variations. And the most important thing to know when you pick them up is if you find a figure in poor condition, like you're going to see this guy right here, Paul Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful, it's not going to bring you very much money. And so you shouldn't pay more than $1, $2, or $3 unless it's for nostalgia's sake for yourself. Or maybe if you're trying to collect them all. I'm curious to know if anybody out there takes the time to strip the paint and repaint them. There are people I can tell looking at eBay listings that are doing exactly that. I have quite a few in there. I have a whole bin full of them in there in better condition. These are the ones that I think I have currently listed on eBay or am going to list soon. So thank y'all for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, Commonwealth Collections, and always tell us below if you want us to do a research video into a certain category. It could be for anything from toys to Tupperware, and we'll do a top 10 list for you. Thanks for joining us, and I can't wait to see you next time.